Here we are. Thank you very much, and welcome to another edition of Public Affairs, Public Access. And our telephone number is 713-807-1794. And lots of things have been happening, and we just have a lot to talk about. And here's Holly Hogrobrooks to help us with
And I'm
our conversation this
very
evening.
happy to be here.
And my friend Hamilton Lewis,
Thank you.
who's come by to talk to us a little bit. And the first thing I guess we're going to talk about is the election coming up now between Barack Obama and Senator Barack Obama and Senator John McCain. And one of these men is likely to become the President of the United States, at least in the near term. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. And they approach election day with the economy foremost in everybody's mind.
We are back to it's the economy.
It's back to it's the economy stupid, yeah. That was Bill Clinton,
Bill
right?
Clinton, right.
Yeah. It's interesting. Both of these men have said that they have the answer to the economy. But before we get to they have the answer, let's talk about why people tell us why it happened. So let's go with Hamilton. Hamilton, they say that the housing bubble, bad loans, sold to unscrupulous persons and people who I guess innocently bought this stuff. Wall Street, the bankers, some people say it was CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, and minorities caused the meltdown economically all over the world. What caused all of this from your point of view?
The cause for the crisis we're experiencing now finds its foundation in the study of cycles. In May 2005, I wrote was it 2005, 2007? I think it was May 13, 2007. I wrote a 4-page special report saying to sell your house and all your home builder stocks because trees seldom grow to the sky.
Yes, well, that's true.
And at that point, a lot of people thought it was ludicrous of me to say that because conditions were terrific, interest rates were low. But what happens is the cycles govern when periods of contraction and expansion will come into play. So back in 2007, 2005, so basically 3 years ago, the cycles were reaching their maximum amplitude. The maximum amplitude is the maximum height that you can reach in your ascent. And after that, you go downhill. It is equivalent to the rain. Once the rain begins to fall, you cannot stop it.
Yes.
So the rain continues to come. And so what has happened is a lot of these people created, as a result of financial engineering, products that they didn't fully understand. And initially we were told that we need to price these instruments. Well, now they tell us that we should not price these instruments because they will have some value sometime in the future. Well, the likelihood is they might not have value in the future because if you have bad input, you're going to have bad output. And
yes.
So that's what has happened. So the surface talk is basically to satisfy someone's appetite, but the genesis is in the cycles. And the cycles are in a full force of contraction right now that will continue for at least 2 years, and everything is downhill. No administration can stop the decline. No amount of money poured into the system can do that. I liken it to a patient with a broken leg. And unless that patient heals completely, you patch up the leg and you say, go and run, the patient will have a lot of challenges running.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you don't foresee, even with the pouring of all of these dollars into the banking community, for example, we're going to see a turnaround in the economy and the stock market over the next several years?
Well, until the cycle's bottom in 2014, all is all an exercise in futility. Nothing will stop the current decline.
All right, then. So the talking snake people and others say that then the world is doomed. We're going to see long bread lines, soup kitchens, riots in the street, neighborhoods being attacked by marauders who are seeking the basics of life. Is it going to come to that?
Probably not. I believe that there are still some generous people in society who will have established themselves to the extent that they will be able to make contributions to those in need.
So you remember, not physically, but from what you read historically, what you read about history rather, that the banks were not guaranteed by the Ford, people like Ford in Detroit in the 30s, J.P. Morgan, New York in the 30s. So what about all of these people who are on television talking about how the economy is going to be saved? Are they lying?
I wouldn't say they're lying. I would say that they're slightly misinformed because they're looking at items that are readily available to everyone, and obviously if everyone knows it, and if it's too obvious, it's not going to work. The long and short is the entire universe is governed by cycles. Obviously, the people buying homes in the U.S. are not responsible for Iceland on the verge of bankruptcy right now. That's an entire country. Obviously, the people buying homes in the U.S. are not responsible for the crisis going on in Australia. The people buying homes here are not responsible for crude oil price going from $147 to $77 a barrel. So there is something behind the scene. There is a mysterious element that moves these prices, that influences human behavior to the extent that those who are not aware of it resort to the visible, the balance sheets, the income statements, the good products, the good companies, and it just does not work. If you look at today's market environment, out of the entire 30 Dow Jones stocks, only one is in the green, only one, and it's up less than 15%. And obviously, if you have 30 stocks that account for the real industrial impact in America, if you have only one going anywhere, nothing's going to happen. If you look at America from an industry perspective, you'll notice that the best performing industry is the retail discount variety. And there are only 10 stocks in that group. Out of those 10 stocks, only 3 of them are over $10. So you have people like Big Lots, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree. If you go 3 weeks ago, the industry was up 34%. 2 weeks ago was up 22%, and last Friday was up 10%. So obviously we're going downhill, which means nothing's going to happen.
Now, you look at markets differently from other people who are financial advisors in the country. One could almost call you a mystic when you look at the systems. How did you learn to apply cycles to financial systems? How did you do that?
Well, it started with a huge interest in my curiosity to know the future. It starts with change, and having observed change, you notice that the basic expression of change is that of motion. So you resort to the laws of motion, which date all the way back to the early 1600s. In fact, Mr. Galileo started with the laws of motion, and Mr. Newton picked them up. Then we want to identify how this motion is changing. And Mr. Isaac Newton said that you can use the differential equation which literally measures how change is changing. And so you begin to identify perspectives that are totally different from what the average minds observe. So I look at change, and change is a function of motion, and I look at the derivative and how these things are changing. So I'm paying attention to velocity and acceleration, so that gives me a totally different perspective. And of course, the high dollar people will pay a price, the low dollar people will pay a price. So everything is academic because we want to focus on the price. For example, when you trade in the capital markets and you have a margin call, they don't tell you, gee, you own IBM, it's a very good blue chip stock. They tell you bring more money because your price is down. And therefore, we must learn to pay attention to the price because the price is that universal entity that expresses the complete vote of the universe. That's where the people express themselves, through the price.
Now, we're coming up on an election, and John McCain and Barack Obama have both said that they have the answer, that they're going to reverse the economic downturn. Now, during the past 80 years, as I understand it, we've had about 13 or 14 of these contractions. And then after they ran their course, as it were, then the market was up again and everything was hunky-dory. Now, can either of these men solve the problem?
I doubt it very seriously. I think it's a process of wishful thinking. You want to give people some degree of hope that I'm the guy for you and this, that, the other. But the cycles are clearly telling you, they've been telling you from the early 1800s what's going to happen. And it's all based on the center of mass of the solar system. It's telling you, and there is nothing to deviate from that. The future is primarily defined for us with a small degree of variation.
Now, Holly, what do you think about all of this? Do you think that the cycles are valid?
Oh, I believe that the cycles are valid. I have my own ideas. I don't want to get off into the whack fringes.
The what?
The wacky fringes of today's society. Because if I started talking to you about astrological cycles and things like that, you say, oh no, the girl is gone. But anyways.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being gone, but not too far.
That's why we're going to leave. But I do understand a reliance on cycles. Yes, I do understand that. And I think it's very valid. And I think what we're going to find out as we examine ourselves is that all of us, to a large degree, rely on some cycles or other.
Well, I'd like to stay away from the Easter Bunny kind of deal.
Okay, well, now, if I may be very glib about it, when I say this, all of us rely on some kind of cycle or other. Having been born a girl, I came to that realization several decades ago.
Yes, yes.
And
let me do this. If you'd like to join us or ask a question or get involved with our conversation, 713-807-1794. You can join us whenever you like. Now, we're coming up on an election. Are we going to have an election?
It is probably not. All depends on potential challenges that could surface between now and then.
Now, a lot of people in this country don't want Obama elected. They don't want him to become the president of the United States. Are they likely to prevail, from your point of view? What do the cycles tell us?
Well, so far, the markets gives you an insight as to who might take the White House. And here's a scenario. Typically, if the market is down going into the election, the incumbent loses the White House, and the next party takes over. Since October 2007, the market has gone from 14,100 to 7,800. So that's clearly an expensive haircut. which leads us to conclude that the probability of the incumbent staying is reduced, and the next people on the other side of the aisle will take over.
Now, there are still many people who are opposed to Obama becoming president.
Probably.
And you're suggesting that the cycles tell you that Obama is likely to become the next president.
Based on
All
what
right.
market directions have pointed
Based
to
on
now.
what the market is saying. What about the possibility of him being felled by an accident?
That's,
do the cycles
that's a
suggest?
possibility also.
That's very, very interesting.
He will become president, but after that, he will be elected president. After that, all bets are off. That's what you're saying.
Most likely.
Okay.
Okay.
And that speaks to Congressman Murtha's comments about the people in his district. And, you know, he's catching a lot of heat for being that honest.
What did he say?
Oh, he talked about how racist the people in the district that he represents are.
Yes, yes. Well, there are a lot of people who in this country who would rather elect Mickey Mouse than Barack Obama.
Well, we got many. It's waiting in the wings.
Many. Hello, caller. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well.
Come on in.
Hi, thank you very much. This is David Watkins from Road Rash Media.
From what? From what? From what?
David Watkins from Road Rash Media.
Okay. All right, David.
I just happened to turn on the station and see your program and see a friend of mine, Hamilton, sitting there, and I wanted to wish him well in his endeavors. But I'd also was really interested and intrigued by your conversation here. It's funny how Hamilton's endeavors are working with charts and graphs, and he's a very technical person when it comes to that. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys. What my question is well, first of all, I wanted to say hi to Hamilton.
Hi.
And thank you for having me on the show. What do you think about the presidential candidates' tendency to tend towards negative displays and just mudslinging instead of dealing with the facts and the truth in our day and age? I mean, this is a very vital time in our future, for the future of our country. And I'm very surprised that we still have not identified and addressed the issues that are so important and detrimental at this time of change.
Yes. Well, that's curious, and
Well, isn't dumb ambiguity as American as apple pie?
Well, wait a minute. Don't be so accusatory about it. My goodness. Dumb ambiguity. My goodness. Caller, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, buddy. All right, let's try it again. I think it's over there. Is that somebody else? Hello? Hello, caller? You're not there.
Well,
All
but
right.
let Hamilton answer his question.
Answer his question.
Well, I think taking the truth nowadays is very painful. A lot of people don't necessarily want to hear the truth. Pouring money on a wound does not necessarily heal the wound. The fundamental issues of the average American saving money has not been addressed. We can never grow our way to prosperity through consumption. We must save and we must invest. And until we can do that, then we're completely reliant on people of different origin to supply capital for us to keep our consumption habits going. If you buy a depreciating asset, it does not help you in one bit. If you buy a house, it does not help you. The thought was, buy a house, it goes up forever. Well, we've noticed that it's not completely true. You buy a car, they'll tell you, some people say buying a high dollar car, it maintains its value. It doesn't happen. And so what people need to do is to learn from other cultures that we need to save some money. And we need to understand the interworkings of money, until we can do that, nothing really changes.
But it's so complicated, Hamilton, to understand how to in fact manipulate and create wealth, manipulate money and create wealth. It seems to me to be very complicated, and that most people don't understand anything except satisfying their needs and their greed. Why would, as far as I'm concerned, why would anybody buy a high dollar automobile? It doesn't. It's beyond my understanding. Okay. I suppose if we didn't have consumption, we wouldn't have any economy at all, would we?
Well, we would have economies. We would be productive. We would create items, and we'll sell it to other people who can pay for it and bring more monies into the country. But if you look at how the country is run, it's basically consumption. You have very little savings, close to zero, and you have they're telling us that the taxpayer is going to pay for the $700 billion. Well, is it really true? People really need to understand the money system and how the money system came into being. I refer to it as the international banking cartel.
No, the conspiracy, now hidden hand business, we really can't talk about that.
No, it's a fact. If you Google who owns the Federal Reserve Bank, you will notice that it's not the Congress, it's not the American people. For example, the New York Federal Reserve Bank is owned by 57% of people outside of America, and even the president doesn't even know who these people are. So until we get a grip as to what the money system is all about, we will have major problems. President Andrew Jackson told us many, many years ago that if the American people sit idle and let these corporations, i.e. banks, grow up around them, one day their children will wake up in their land where their fathers conquered to no homes. And what are we having today?
Andrew Jackson said that.
That's Andrew Jackson. That's the
Yeah,
right
they didn't
quote from
like
it.
him. He was an Indian fighter and all of that. They didn't like him.
But he told the truth.
No,
He told the truth.
Hello,
man.
caller, how are you? Hello? You're not there. All right. Now, there's some other things that we want to talk about quickly. I hear people talking about during this election cycle, I hear the candidates talking about alternative energy. And let's talk about oil. Now, as I understand it, the people who control the oil in the world control our country effectively.
we
They
need
are the other government. They are the hidden
It's the
hand.
cartel.
They are the other government. All right. Now, and this other government has long manipulated how our wealth goes to them. In other words, they're milking the golden cow. All right. Now, is it in their interest to allow this economic cow to collapse?
I believe that whether it's in their interest or not, this economic system will collapse eventually. So it doesn't matter if they contribute directly or indirectly.
So the banking cartel then, how is it going to, in fact, restructure itself to continue to make money?
Well, what they're telling us now is that they want to reflate. See, what happens is we're into what I call a deflation. And
Deflation cycle.
right. So a deflationary cycle is when you have a contraction of credit.
All right.
So we've seen credit gone, basically. We've also seen employment gone. We've seen production gone. The opposite side of deflation is inflation, is where they expand the money and credit supply to where each value of the existing unit is worth less. So when you have the deflation, each remaining unit is worth more. So there is a scarcity. So unless you let this cycle go through its natural pattern, there is nothing you're going to do.
So they will. So this banking cartel, the oil cartel, and others will reinflate in about 2 or 3 years.
After 2013,
2013.
the deflation has to completely do its
All
phenomenon.
of the air has to go out of the
All the
tire.
air has to come out.
I see.
Have to change it. Legs have to be fixed and
Yeah.
completely healed to be able to run
To
again.
run again. Hello, caller. Oh no, well, you're not there. All right, now I want to talk about this alternative energy. I've heard some people say that the reason that the oil cartel people are getting antsy and the price is going down is because Americans are talking about wind, solar, geothermal, etc., nuclear. Is that true?
That is incorrect. Again, if you look at the expansion-contraction cycle, and you look at the commodity deflation that has been taking place, last year we're told that food was in such short demand
Yes.
that we would need fertilizers for the next 50 years to grow food in India and Africa and other places. Well, if we look at what has happened to the fertilizer chemical industry group, which ranked number 1 most of last year, they're ranked in the bottom 200 of performers year to date. Stocks like Potash Saskatchewan has gone from $245 a share down to below $80 a share. Mosaic has gone from $196 to $35. So that is a deflationary pattern. Oil collapsing, gold collapsing, silver collapsing, steel collapsing. United States Steel Corporation sold for $175. Now is under 60. And you say, wait a second, this is a major, major move. It's a contractionary
insanity.
pattern,
Yes.
and people refuse to recognize it, but there is no amount of sugarcoating will stop the bleeding.
You can join us at 713-807-1794. Hamilton Lewis is over here. Holly Hogrobrooks is over there, and I'm Ed Shannon. And we're just having a good time talking about this economic cycle and how it's not likely to get any better until it gets worse. But you don't foresee any blood in the streets at this point.
There will be, the next 2 years are probably going to be the worst 2 years that most professionals have experienced in the last 80 years. I believe will be much uglier. I also believe that most Americans have not fully digested what is going on. And when they wake up to the music, they will be in total shock that they will start taking some drastic action, probably pulling back, and we'll see even further contraction taking place.
There's been, of course, a great deal being predicted about 2012, is it? 2012 is supposed to be a terrible year or maybe a year of renewal for the planet. And now, as we said earlier, your views are different from most people who are in the business of advising people about how to make money.
But now, it wasn't that 2012, December the 19th?
December
31st.
December 21st.
December 21st.
Is it December
It
21st?
was right before Christmas, yes.
2012.
2012. When someone called us to tell us that,
The world's going to end.
yeah, I mean, the bottom is going to drop out of everything. That's
Yeah.
not another way to put it, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case.
You don't think that's going to
I
happen?
think there will be a new awareness taking place.
A new awareness taking
new
place.
awareness,
A
a new opportunity, new way of looking at things. And after 2013, I expect a major bull market into 2020. So good days are ahead for those who are courageous to
Hello, caller.
stay afloat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, come on in.
All right, sir. Thank you.
I wish you would turn that radio or television down. All right, hello?
Yes, sir.
Come on in.
How about that?
All right, that's good.
Okay, I'm enjoying it very much so, and I just had a question.
Go ahead.
Isn't it true that since they have the knowledge, and if they would seek the face of God in the east, that it could be like a wind coming over those dry bones, and it could take place without going through the cycle?
I see. The dry bones. Yes, that's Ezekiel, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Let's ask Hamilton. What do you think, Hamilton?
Yes, that is true. God could definitely intervene. The question is, do we want him? God is a gentleman. He doesn't force himself. And at the rate we're going, we're indirectly saying no.
We're saying no, that we don't want your help.
Correct. So it's not going to
We
happen.
have the answer.
That's true. We can do this. I can do this. It's all
Yeah.
about me, me, me.
Yes.
It's not going to happen. Not now, not ever.
I
Until the arrogance changes, nothing happens. And of course, you know, you have, I call it the sins to wealth creation. The first one is pride and greed and procrastination. You know, those three together just doom you completely.
So the question is, how can one protect oneself during these next couple of years to keep the wolf from knocking the door down?
Well, the best way to do that is to adjust your asset allocation in line with the marketplace. In other words, you want to be in sync with the market, do what the market says to do. In other words, market said I'm going down, so which means you should be selling short. You should take the inverse position of the market. There are many exchange-traded funds on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, on all the major averages, and even particular industry groups. You don't have to be an expert to buy them. You just buy it like you buy any other stock. For instance, you look at the NASDAQ 100, where you have Baidu, the Chinese Google, you have Intuitive Surgical, Google, and Apple Computer. Those are the four biggest names in that group. Well, we've seen Google gone from $747 to under $400 since November last year. So it also concludes that the inverse of the NASDAQ 200 has gone from $35 a share to $90 a share. So if you knew what was going on, how the wind was blowing, you would shift your monies accordingly and participate in that advance. So the long and short to the answer is you take the inverse of whatever the decline is and you will prosper.
So in order to survive in this economy, now you hear a lot of people talking about they lost money with their 401ks.
Correct.
All right. And some people are so desperate they went out and, you know, decided to take an aspirin or something. There was nothing that they could do about that.
Yes, there is something they could do. They could have shifted their 401k from equities to money market fixed income. Now, to do that, they would have to have an awareness as to when the waves in the markets are changing from positive to negative. In October 2007, there was a major shift from positive to negative, which means defensive action was the order of the day. So instead of expecting to make money on something rising, you notice that prices were deteriorating.
Yes, they were.
And since mutual funds, generally a large part of most 401ks, mutual funds buy stocks in America, in China, and Brazil, and India, and Russia. And a lot of people have the belief that if you buy internationally, you're probably safe. That has not been the case. The Chinese Shanghai index has gone from over 6,000 to under 2,000. This is similar to what happened in Japan back in 1989.
For 10 years or so,
the Japanese market
problem.
was at 39,000. And 19 years later, it has recovered less than 1/3 of its value. So for all those people who tell you buy and hold it, if you have 19, 20 years, it's fine. If you have a lot of money, hang on.
Yes.
You know, I usually use the analogy of General Electric. You can argue that that's a blue chip stock. It's been around since the early 1800s. From 2000, the stock traded at $60 a share, and today it's under 25.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I say it's who you are. You have to decide who you are and how you want to run and how you want to sleep at night, and then trade your money accordingly.
A lot of things they talked about, our candidates who are running for office. They talked about taxes, they talked about Iraq, they talked about health care, they talked about gay marriage, they talked about the environment, they talked about the regulatory climate, they talked about abortion, and they talked about negative campaigning. Mr. Ayers, Acorn, CRA, etc. What about these areas? Healthcare, for example. Is it going to go up, down,
Well,
sideways, no ways?
the pharmaceutical industry is underwater as it stands right now. The HMO market sector is underwater. You look at the big giant, United Healthcare, their stock has gone from $60 to under 25. They've gobbled up other HMOs, and you look at the pharmaceutical giants from Merck to Pfizer, been underwater for several years.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that with the big names run out of patents, the generics will probably come to market
Yes, and they're gonna
and
do
generate
well.
some inferior products, probably less, but I don't think that you will have a scenario whereby the healthcare will be as the politicians want it, because someone has to pay for something.
Yes.
It's good to think that we're going to get everything, but how are we going to pay for it?
We're not.
It sounds good. Yeah, I'm going to
Some-
get free healthcare, I'm going to get free education, I'm going to get this and that, the other.
Yes.
They usually refer to other countries who have it, but these other countries come here when they have major problems.
Yes. Yes. What about this business with this war in Iraq and the possibility of another war with Iran? A nuclear what? World War IV, is it? World War IV, which will end the world, apparently, according to the Armageddon people, if we buy their books.
Wasn't World War I supposed to do that?
World War I was supposed to do that, World War II, then all of the little wars in between, and now the biggie. What do you think?
Well, I
War, are
think,
we going to make money off war?
yes, the banks make money off the war because they supply the capital for the governments to do their
the
thing.
wars.
But I believe that we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that all the efforts of all the global central banks will be unable to stop the cards from crumbling. I believe that we will come to the point where they will throw up their hands and say, we have a new system, we have a new way of exchanging value for services, and I believe that the 666 digit may as well come into being.
Mm-hmm. Hamilton, I think have you been listening to the talking snake?
Absolutely not. All you have to do is pay attention.
Well, I'm trust me,
You pay attention.
I'm working on it.
I mean,
I'm trying to pay attention.
I mean, the government signs a bill for $700 billion, and the market drops.
They call
They
it
were
the
listening
bailout.
to the talking snake.
The market drops.
Yes, well, maybe the talking snake is real. I mean, it's
And you say, wait a minute, what's going on? Then the other international governments do the same thing.
yes,
And their markets drop. Mm-hmm. I mean, yesterday Japan was down 11%.
and so was Great Britain and
You know?
France
So
and Germany.
there comes a time when you say, no, this is not working. They finally get to the point, this is not working. And all of a sudden someone comes up with this great idea. Well, if we have this one unit of exchange, then it's probably going to be the good thing to do. But we know where that's headed.
One world government. I don't know, Hamilton. I've been listening to. I listened to other guys who are financial analysts, and I asked them about how they see the world and the economy developing. And then I talked to you, and I see your view on how the world is developing in the and the economy. And you say a new economy is coming. a new exchange
New
structure,
monetary exchange.
new exchange structure for goods and services, what they're worth. All right. What about young people today in America? Is there a future for them?
Oh, there is a bright future if they're willing to learn, if they're willing to stop procrastinating, if they're willing to reduce their exposure to American Idol and The Office, Desperate Housewives. They can really pick up some great ideas to navigate the capital markets, currency markets, and generate some incredible value for themselves, their friends, and their families. Imagine these young people play video games.
Yes, they do.
They're very brilliant, they're very capable of focusing, but that focus needs to be addressed where they can profit from it.
So there's value in the future for those who will take advantage of it.
Absolutely correct.
Now, but Hamilton, we still have a lot of people, a lot of young people who just don't get it.
That's true. It's unfortunate.
And they say, well, wasn't that true when you guys were young? Weren't there lots of people who just didn't get it? Well, yes.
And that's why we're in the mess we are now, because we allowed them to get in charge.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, from what I'm learning from Hamilton this evening and what we learned in previous editions of this program is that it really doesn't matter who's in charge of the government. And what is it, 500 or so people, 600, 400 in the House, and 400 plus in the House, and 500 in the Senate, and then a whole host of people that are bureaucrats. But only a small number really run the country.
And those small numbers are not necessarily here.
They could be outside of the country. They are outside of the country.
Correct.
As far as you can. Well, remember I told you in a conversation before that I believe that there is this hidden hand in history and in all events that fold these events into some master plan. Now, I've been accused of being a little, over the edge for believing that, but clearly something is happening that most people do not, in fact, understand.
That's true.
Well, do we really have time? Most people really, we don't have time to be concerned about what's really happening.
Well, we should find time because it affects us. We still have time to congregate in this country. We still have time to speak our minds. We still have time to express our discontent with government. I believe that over the course of several years, that could likely diminish. In the past, America has been known for its entrepreneurial spirit. All of a sudden, we have practices taking place that look like, smell like, feel like socialism, but we cannot say it.
Yes. Well, I think they just said it a couple of days ago. We're going to take over most of the banks in the country. That may be creeping socialism. If they take over the banks, what is going to be taken over next? It is frightening. Hello, caller. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and yourself?
I'm excited about it. I really am.
That's good. I
Come on.
remember you a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know you have knowledge. And I was speaking of that earlier about the wind blowing across, and you were saying about the people who control the world. So I just pray that we all get in our closet in the meantime, since we know that.
Yes, we know that there's a hidden hand that controls the planet. There's no question about it. Thank you very much, caller. All right. I want to talk a little bit about this preoccupation that our candidates have with this business of abortion and gay marriage and so on. What is that all about?
That is not our candidates. That is a candidate from the losing party.
Wait a minute. Our candidate. I mean, I may be for the guy who's on the losing side.
Well, then that's your problem. No, but seriously, those are the kinds of red herrings that get thrown in. That's that kitchen sink thing. They get thrown in at the end while people are lamenting their loss.
But there are 27 to 30 states who are against gay marriage.
That may very well be.
It's true. It's true.
That may very well be. And there,
in fact, most
states,
societies on earth are against it.
Okay, and there may be people who are against abortion. I'm sure they are. I've heard of them before. But what has that got to do with electing your national leader to take this country out of the crisis? They've called it a crisis that we're in now. It ain't got a hill of beans to do with that, and it's a red herring that's thrown up to get people all emotionally involved.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't got nothing to do with the election.
I see. All right. So what do you think, Al?
Well, I think the issue of gay and gay marriage and abortion is such that, you know, we look at how God designed us. He created us to be free with our opportunity to approach Him if we understand that without Him we cannot be complete. Well, some of us at some time get to a point where we believe that we are a God and we can take on the universe by ourselves.
I like that.
And as a result, we adopt certain habits and behavioral patterns that are inconsistent with what God said. So as a result, we bring on for ourselves the issues we experience. And once we become conscious again, sometimes we change our minds.
You know, I really don't believe that although we have in God we trust on our currency in this country, that most people believe in this God business. I don't believe that most people believe it. I know we have a group that suggests that they believe, but they only talk about prosperity. They don't talk about the things that God is about. They talk about wealth.
That's true.
They don't talk about life after death. They talk about the end of the world. They talk about prosperity. So, as I understand it, it's not about any of that.
It's lopsided.
Yes. So I don't know whether we have the protection of this God over us in America.
Well, by the fruits we produce, we know it.
Yes.
And the fruits we're producing suggest the contrary.
Quickly, I want to move to this idea. There's some terms that we did not understand with regard to this bailout, the $700 billion bailout. I understand that another $150 billion has been added to it in pork, pork, if you like pork. And but there's some things I want to talk about. Now we've said this bailout is going to produce some creeping socialism by nationalizing a number of the banks in this country. All right, even though the banks are going to produce some income, allegedly, for the government's purchase of preferred stock in these banks. All
That's
right.
what we're told.
That's what we're told. All right. Can that happen?
Possibly.
That could possibly happen.
Possibly.
But they would still own a portion of the banks.
The thought is, at some future date, they will relinquish that hold. I doubt it.
That once they start to own the banks. Now, what does that do for this international banking cartel then?
Well, it plays...
Or are they one and the same?
Absolutely. It plays directly into the hand of the banking cartel. You notice England, Australia, Canada, all of them, they're all the same. Because back in 1695, the Rothschild family in England came up with the Bank of England. In America, the American people did not want a central bank. And as a result, thanks to President Woodrow Wilson, right before Christmas 1913, he signed into law the Federal Reserve Act. Well, there was nothing federal about it. There are no reserves. There is no money anywhere. The Congress or the Treasury just gives them the right to print money. And they print government bonds, and they sell these bonds in the marketplace, and they extract money from national governments and from people. So what that does is you have a piece of paper that has absolutely no value. It is backed by nothing. And what you have happening is that the standard of living of the population decreases, their freedoms are diminished over time, and you can clearly note today that we have the Patriot Act that monitors what you say, how you say it, and if there's anything that is said that is inconsistent with what the establishment wants, you become an enemy of the state.
This is incredible. It's scary. Hello, caller.
Yes, I was calling to make a comment.
Yes.
Yes, I had wanted to know.
Turn your television
Pick
set.
up my life after death.
Turn your television down.
All right, hold on.
All right, there
Are
you
you
go.
telling me that the whole phrase, full
Yes,
credit?
I wanted to know what did you think about life after death, and I wanted to comment on what do you think the state of America going to be once this black man do win the presidency? How do you think white people going to feel towards black people?
Yes. Well, we probably don't want to make that prediction, but we'll take a stab at it. All right. What do you think?
Well, what do I think about life after death? Well, if you believe, then you have experienced life after death. If you don't believe, then you have a non-experience.
On life after death. Now, what do the cycles tell us about what's going to happen if Obama is elected president of the United States? There are lots of people who hate him. There are lots of people who already said that they want to kill him. Lots of people who call him a terrorist. Lots of people said, well, they said a lot of terrible things about him. Could the unthinkable happen to him?
Everything is a possibility.
Well, caller, I hope that answers your question. But quickly, want to move.
I want to go briefly to something you said earlier. We use the phrase a lot when we talk about our government. We're going to place the full faith and credit of this country, of
One
the
of the terms I got
national
here, credit,
resources,
yes,
behind this. And as I sit and listen to you talk, I'm feeling this empty bag.
Full faith and
I
credit.
mean, you put the full faith and credit in here, you hold it up real tight and you shake it.
that bag and nothing
You ain't
happens.
got nothing.
Nothing. Yes.
Well,
Other terms. Go ahead.
it's an interesting observation because when you look at the current dollar bill, it basically says a Federal Reserve note. The United States Congress, our Constitution said only the Congress is authorized to issue currency. Yet we notice that all the powers, all the former presidents who rose up against that got into serious challenges, and many of them were killed. Abraham Lincoln went to the central banks and asked them to get money for the war, and they charged him 38%. And he said, okay, I'm going to authorize Congress to create the silver dollar. So he used the congressional currency to make that happen. And we know what happened to him.
Yes, he was murdered, but and again, the conspiracy theory history we were talking about earlier talks about the real reason for these things happening.
Right.
All right? And well, it says this is the real reason, but John Wilkes Booth was merely a pawn in the murder of Abraham Lincoln, according to the conspiracy theory history.
Well, you don't think all of us out here believe that John Wilkes Booth was a half-drunk actor who decided to just go and shoot the president without somebody motivating
There was
him?
something going other than
Yeah, or
going
crossed
on.
his palm with some of that silver
no, it had nothing to do
that
with
may
it.
have had the full faith and credit.
Well, it really had nothing to do with that. He believed sincerely that Lincoln freeing the slaves and subjugating the South was a terrible thing. So he was just used. All right.
Well, if he didn't get paid for that job, he's a
Well, no,
bigger
he
damn
didn't get
fool
paid.
than I thought he was.
He didn't get paid. He didn't get paid for it. He was just used.
Okay.
You know, the other guys who were talking about when Lincoln went to the Federal Reserve people and said, we're going to go to the silver thing, that caused a problem. That caused a problem.
It was taking money away from them.
Right.
And anything that takes money away from them, they don't like.
Yes.
In fact, if you really want to learn about the true money system, there are many sources out there you can read and really get your hairs standing all over the
Top of your
place.
head. Okay, here we go. I got to go. We got to go. All right, here we go. Holly, thank you very much.
I enjoyed it.
We're going to be back and talk some more next month, I understand, and we'll have a lot to talk about because we'll know who the new president is, and people can lament one way or the other. Hamilton, as always, wonderful
you.
talking to you, and we're going to invite you back
Thank you.
because as the economy goes downhill, we want to hear some more from you. Got to go. God bless. Until next time, have fun. Save your money.